Hello everyone, I am Tacet, and today I'm going to be going over the new hero class that ended up coming into the game a few days ago of the Sunspear. I was waiting a little while in hopes that the weapon would come into the game because it's kind of glitched right now, though apparently it's going to be coming after reset or at some other point, so unfortunately we'll have to do the video without it. But as far as the hero class itself, it's one of the new hero classes, so it runs for 3 days from the Friday reset all the way until Monday reset, so we still have a whole day left. It counts as a Rashka as well as a Pride Lands troops, so we are restricted to both of those boundaries for the event itself. Do keep in mind, if you do try getting the weapon right now, it still will not unlock it regardless of 250 wins or actually buying it. It won't until later, so it's not really that good of a weapon. Let's just go over it real quick. It deals, it chooses a mana and then it deals damage to each enemy of that color and burns them, and then it gives all allies of the matching color 4 attack. So really it would only ever be good against a pure color team, is essentially the only time you would ever use it. Then maybe on a Guild War Defend if you didn't really have anything else, but that is pretty much it. Maybe as newer players for some burns, but other than that, it's not really going to do much, so something you can pretty much just ignore for the most part. Speaking about ignoring, it also isn't too good of an idea to actually buy too many packs. Since it is a new hero class, a lot of people tend to buy the packs, and it's actually way more expensive than at any other point to try to make the leaderboard, so probably want to stay away from the leaderboard, as it is quite a bit more difficult and will cost more gems, and you'd just be better if your only goal was to get orbs. You would get much better value doing it during a class event that wasn't new. Anyways, as far as the actual team, of course, we are restricted to actually using Rashkas from Pride Land specifically. The team I've been using is Dawnbringer, Sakima, Spirit Main, and Ubestead. If you don't have Dawnbringer, you can use Mang. If you don't have Ubestead, you can use the Rakshun. Or you can go and replace that Sakima with a Shadowhunter and if you want to, you can even just replace everything with Spirit Main, because it ends up giving you extra red mana, which you can put into your Dawnbringer or into your Mang, and then win off of that. If you are going down the Mang route, it is highly advised to use the Titan hero class. Otherwise, you can pretty much get away with any hero class if just using the Dawnbringer. Anyways, let's just go into one battle real quick up against the Urskas, just to kill it out with this team. So basically what we'll want to do here is just rush up Dawnbringer. We do have a Valraven, so we're going to need to have to deal with that. But we should have the damage to be able to do so. So ideally we could get that right into a Ubestead. Doesn't seem like we'll be able to. One nice thing, since this does count as a Rashka, we are gaining that extra 1 magic and 1 attack per turn onto our hero as well, which is really useful. But we'll get that down. Looks like we'll want to get Sakima all the way to max before we cast anything else, and see if we can actually align her double convert. She of course is blue to skull as well as the brown to yellow, which I do not believe we currently have right now. We have a few here or there. It's not going to be able to extra turn for us, and putting more yellows onto the board might not necessarily be a good thing. To a degree, I kind of want to leave that first slot alive just so we can still block it on yellow. So it does ever so barely survive right there, which is actually a good thing in this particular instance, because again, we do need that thing to survive just so it doesn't feed the other thing mana. So right here, I guess we'll go and give ourselves some attack. I wanted that to give full mana. Apparently the one it wanted to surge on is not the one we actually needed, but we'll take a blue, take the, actually should probably leave the blue there. Oh, we'll take it down. Grab that, it'll last a little bit of our mana. Keep this thing hit full so we can actually start one-shotting with everything. Could have hit a hit on this. We still don't have our alignment or anything though, so I guess we'll still wait it out. Green or purple would be great. Still, again, even that's not available, so I guess we'll just kind of keep delaying. I do not want to kill that yet, just so it keeps blocking the Valraven properly, which is kind of the goal of that at the moment. So we'll go get Ubestead up. That will allow Stat to start killing things. So right before he gets his cast, we'll throw that down. He's in kill range. He'll easily get killed off of this. And then we can just go and hit the last little bit of damage here. And we already have alignment. Get the hit. And pretty much just do that for every single battle. Barely take any damage. Barely lose anything. And works pretty smoothly. And we end up even getting a level off that. And of course, you get the standard rewards as always. They haven't changed at all. So this hero class and its perks, is it really that good? The answer is pretty much no. It's definitely below average. The only thing that it has going for it that is exceptionally good is it creates a firestorm at the start of every single turn. This is relevant for, well, any team that needs a lot of reds, though this is slightly less relevant because if you have things like Infernus or Ubestead, you don't really need to have a perpetual firestorm because those will technically get you enough And even if you're a newer player, you can still get away with just using Sunbird for your Firestorm. So there's a lot of Firestorm options out there compared to other colors, so not really as useful having a perpetual red, but still nonetheless it is a perpetual red, which will help in Guild War reds as well as just any team that happens to require a really high amount of reds. One pretty noteworthy thing about this hero class at the moment is it's the only hero class in the entire game that currently has the water tree. There are some more coming in the future that will be having this tree, but let's just go over all of these because, well, it's new. It freezes a random enemy at the start of battle on the very first one. This is probably one of its most relevant perks, actually, out of every single one of these, oddly enough, despite it being the first one. This is particularly good against any team that tends to get or needs to get a very quick loop at the beginning, as well as things like goblins or anything that's really heavy loop or extra turn dependent. So you just get a freeze automatically at the start of battle. That will disable them out and make sure that they can't do anything. Very, very effective. Immune to freeze, not the greatest of things, but again, if you're up against something that has freeze, it's nice to have immune to it, especially if your hero happens to be in first slot when you're using a skull spam or something like that. But still, very nice. Don't have to deal with any of those freezes. Here is the polearm extra magic. I believe this was the only weapon that didn't have a tree, and now it finally does. Not really that relevant because there really isn't any, or at least on this hero class, we don't get the, there's no polearm that really has the extra magic going for it, so we don't really get any synergy in that regard. It has all blue allies gaining 4 life, which, again, unless you're using a lot of blues, not going to do much. Submerge here is pretty decent. It ends up submerging a random ally whenever you do 4x, 5x matches. Very protective, though do keep in mind, you do lose to Submerge whenever you do cast a spell or hit a skull. And of course, Submerge just protects you from AoE hits, anything that hits all enemies. Though there are some semi-exceptions to that, like things that kind of hit like multi, like Infernus. Even though he technically hits everything, it's not calculated as it because he hits one target, then the adjacents. It doesn't actually count as hitting everything simultaneously. It's just some standard extra blue mana. And other than that, it gives all merfolk allies 2 magic when an enemy dies, which isn't really going to be used much. So basically, out of all those, the blue magic link, the submerge, and the immune to freeze and the freeze at the start of battle are about the only things you would use on that. Other than that, Entangle on Forest is about the only thing really relevant, which is why we have that set. Ends up putting a nice little Entangle on them, so you don't need to really worry about skulls. That combined with the freeze is actually pretty powerful, so you don't need to worry about extra turns, nor do you really have to worry about their skulls, or at least partially on their extra turns. Other than that, it does have Fire Tree, which is a little bit odd, because it has immune to burning, as well as a Firestorm, yet it has Perpetual Firestorm, and it has automatically immune to burning. So a little bit odd that it would have those two, or a tree that would have those two. But other than that, the relevant things on here for this hero class is all Rushkas gain 1 attack and life, which can be useful if you're using a 4x Rushka team. All red allies gain 1 magic, which is also relevant because, again, a lot of Rushkas use red. And other than that, extra red mana, and the final one is triple skull damage when burning. It's definitely not the best at using this. There are better hero classes that use this, like Warlord and such. This one is probably not one you'd really use for that aspect, and just in general, you'd probably not really use it at all. The only really good thing I'd say is the fact that it gets this freeze, but there's going to be new hero classes coming in the future that will get that, so once they do, this class will basically become irrelevant. I guess to a degree, you can kind of still get value out of it by using it with an Ubistet and such, but not the greatest of things. And the only other thing, of course, would be for the Perpetual Red Storm off its traits. And I didn't end up mentioning this earlier, but as I said, it is a Pride Lands Rashka. But the other relevant thing is the mana that it ends up getting. It ends up doing extra damage based on whenever using a red weapon. The biggest issue with this is there's no polearm that is red that's actually viable, so there's really not much synergy there. The most viable polearm, if I'm not mistaken, is War and Peace, which is a brown and green weapon, which obviously is not red, so you don't really get the synergy on that, unfortunately. Anyways, let's get into a few teams. We have a few to show that actually aren't completely horrible. First up is, oddly enough, a standard Divine team, and the reason why this works is this particular version of this Divine team does not actually have Red Storm. Normally you'd have your Red Storm off of using Infernus or Ubistet. This team does not use either of those two things, so it needs some way to get that Storm, and the way to get that is off this hero now, so that's probably one of the most convenient things it's actually used for if you actually can build this team. Using this hero class is, I believe, actually best in slot, oddly enough. Even better than if you were to use the actual Divine hero class or anything like that, simply because the Perpetual Red Storm will almost always allow you to land that extra turn, which is very convenient, to say the least. I'll move that over, get a nice little hit. We'll go and just let that kind of die out. We'll throw this on the last slot. Generally with Ketris, again, if you haven't used Petrus much. Generally, you just throw him onto second slot and then fourth slot, and then you win out the battle. There are a few other ways that you can kind of do that, but generally that's how it goes, and as you can see, it just wins pretty easily. Other than that, we have Red Guild War. Obviously, if you're going to bother using this hero class, one of the things that you might use it for is Red Guild War Day, because he has perpetual Red Storm, so obviously that is quite beneficial on a Red Guild War Day, since it will provide you with a lot more red mana to be able to use. But right off the bat, we're basically going to want to get Alchemist up as quickly as possible, throw that down, try to get World Breaker, and go from there. If you don't have World Breaker, you can replace that with Yagway, and if you don't have Dawnbringer, you can replace that with Death Kneel. Okay, so what do we need here? We need Alchemist mana, so we'll take that red. He'll give us more. We'll take the green so we get a little bit more. We even actually turn that. Very nice. We'll go and throw this, I guess, on the purple. Looks like a pretty decent. We have 2 5 times, so that should be enough to almost full. We'll then keep throwing this for extra HP as well as hopefully getting our mana. And now basically all we do is just loop between the two of these. So we will go take that. Could throw a Dawnbringer right here. I think we will, just because he'll waste his turn and do kind of nothing. So hopefully he doesn't do Wild Queen. Perfect he doesn't. We'll go clear out the board. Keep getting our, pretty much always get an extra turn with this. Obviously it's not guaranteed, but the chance of getting an extra turn is a lot higher when you have a Storm active compared to not having a Storm active, so helps out a lot whenever we cast Divinia or Wardbreaker. And yeah, that's pretty much a match. I guess we'll go kill it with a Dawnbringer, and that is that. And same general premise, just different team. And now for a slightly cheaper one, a infinite loop that ends up using it. There are a few different ways that you can do it as far as your damage source, like using a Goblin Rocket or something. But Alchemist, Moneylender, Queen Titania with a Dawnbringer is what we'll be going with here. You can replace out Dawnbringer, as I mentioned earlier, with Death Kneel, and you can replace out the Queen Titania with a Goblin Rocket if you want, if you needed to go super budget to make it work. But we're going with this. Basically, what we'll be able to do is just standard Alchemist Moneylender loop, be able to get that down. You may have noticed I used the same banner for all of these. It just works so good with this hero class. The double yellow plus 1 red plus or -1 green. It just feels like everything that ends up getting used with just happens to use that banner, it feels like. But let's go, and same general premise of what we just did. Get the Alchemist up as immediately as possible. We start with Entangle, so we can actually just ignore Skulls if we want. So we'll just go for those, get rid of all these greens here, which technically we don't need to worry about. He is frozen on green, so that is a little bit more of a disable there. But we just throw this down, that'll give us Queen Titania. We throw it with 13+, double check board, throw Alchemist if we have it, repeat the cycle, and just keep doing that until we win. And then just throw Dawnbringer at the end, or keep throwing your Death Kneel and Goblin Rockets. And same general premise. So we'll go get our damage down, move that, get everything back up with Moneylender again, and you just keep repeating the cycle until you inevitably win off of sheer infinite damage. Of course, it's ridiculously bad if you get frozen, but luckily your hero has immune to freeze because of that one trait, and hopefully they just won't have a freeze because it's annoying if something gets frozen, especially a red on that team. But anyways, that's basically everything related to the new hero class. It's pretty underwhelming, and only really used currently for its initial freeze and mainly into the future for its perpetual red storm. You can kind of use it on the Red Guild War days, you can kind of use it with Queen Titania and some other things that are super red dependent, but for the most part, I feel like this hero class is mostly going to be unused. But anyways guys, thank you all so much for watching. If you still have any other questions, feel free to leave it in the comment section below, and goodbye everyone.